Well, hello. Welcome to High Cheese with Darren Maloney. Today is Friday, February 18th, 2022. And I'm very excited about today's episode because coming up later, I have an exclusive interview with Ned Lang, the father of J6 detainee Jake Lang. But first, because of these events are turning quickly, I just want to take us up north to Canada. Right now, we have the Canadian police, and it appears to be military, surrounding the truckers in Ottawa and slowly descending on them. We've got reports also that one or two truckers had their windows smashed and dragged out and arrested by the police. So that's where we are right now. My wife now is monitoring the feeds of citizen journalists that are up there, taping everything for the protection of those truckers. And if I have to run real quick, it means my wife has found something good on with her monitoring. So here's a couple of things I just want to point out is that Canada, you get what you pay for. And one thing I don't understand is after viewing this clip I'm going to show you, how could you possibly vote for this guy? Now, in this clip, it's from 2018. Justin Trudeau is asked, well, what's your favorite country? He says China because he likes the fact that it's authoritarian. And you elected this guy? Well, you get what you pay for.
He was asked which country he most admired and referred to China.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need to go green as fastest. We need to start investing in solar.
I found it a bit silly for Justin Trudeau to say that what he admired the most was a dictatorship, frankly. I've always been rather fond of democracies.
A Canadian politician said, I look for China. I'm admire of the basic dictatorship in China. That is not only shocking, that is a shame.
And so it's been a bad week for Trudeau. First of all, he had to invoke the Emergency Act, which is nothing more than the War Powers Act that was updated in 1988 and give it a more palatable name. So he invokes the War Powers Act in order to get rid of some truckers that are parked around Parliament. That's just your own incompetence showing through on this. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. But within somebody like Trudeau, somebody like Xi in China, they will go to DEFCON every chance they can to crack down on its people because that's all they know. Now, if he was a real leader, he would have went out there and talked to the truckers and came to some kind of resolution, but not an authoritarian. And thank God he's an incompetent authoritarian that can't fight his way out of a paper bag. But he's cracked down. And let me tell you something. Some of you that are old enough to remember this, but Tiananmen Square, and this is the thing that really raised my spidey senses about China. Tiananmen Square was a democratic uprising in China, and it was squashed. But what really resonated with me, and I don't know who interviewed Deng Xiaoping, he was the premier at the time, and he essentially said that, look, I've got a population of billion people. It could have been more, could have been less. But if I have to kill 200,000 of them, I will. And I just thought that was startling. But that really got me going. And this is what, these are the people that Trudeau admires. So it was a bad week for him. Now, to add insult to injury, Trudeau's justice minister insulted the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, who will likely be the next president in 2024. And the people that voted for him. I just hope that when Donald Trump becomes president in 2024, that the first thing he does is ask for this justice minister to step down, if he's still there. So let me play you a clip from this justice minister.
Look, you've just compared people who may have donated to this to the same people who are funding maybe a terrorist. I just want to be clear here, sir. This is really important. A lot of folks says, look, I just don't like your vaccine mandates and I donated to this. Now it's illegal. Should I be worried that the bank can freeze my account? What's your answer to that?
Well, I think if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried.
So listen to that. So anybody that supports Trump is now a terrorist, according to Canada. How's that going to work out with you in 2024, my friend? You're an embarrassment. Trudeau is an embarrassment. And you probably all should resign. Now, additionally, Trudeau comes out and presents himself as a bigot. He's called these truckers Nazis, Confederates, everything without any form of evidence. And he looks down on them. And you can tell. Just read his face. But the interesting thing is that he is so wrapped up in this whole racism issue, and this is what they love to go back to. Everything is about race. During the debate that they're having right now, as a matter of fact, they've been having a debate on this War Powers Act. You've got 7 days to get approval from the MPs in the Senate before, in order to move ahead on it. Now, for these 7 days, you can continue using the powers that are given to you under the War Powers Act. And again, I'm calling this the War Powers Act. It's nothing more than just this Emergency Authorization Act is nothing more than a nicer way of calling it the War Powers Act. So anyway, getting back to this, he's got 7 days to get approval from their version of Congress. And if he doesn't get it, he has to stop. But for those first 7 days, he's allowed to use the powers that he's given in the Act. But anyway, his playbook is any pushback, call him racist. Well, I think he jumped the shark on this one. During the debate on this Emergency Act, he called a conservative Jewish MP a Nazi sympathizer. So I'm going to play a clip and listen to his response and listen to the chaos that he creates by this.
Government needs to trust Canadians. Those are the words of the Prime Minister in 2015. These people, very often misogynistic, racist, women haters, science deniers, the fringe. Same Prime Minister 6 years later as he fans the flames of an unjustified national emergency. So, Mr. Speaker, when did the Prime Minister lose his way? When did it happen?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Conservative Party members can stand with people who wave swastikas. They can stand with people who wave the Confederate flag. We will choose to stand with Canadians who deserve to be able to get to their jobs, who be able to get their lives back. These illegal protests need to stop, and they will, Mr. Speaker.
I just want to remind the honourable members, including the Right Honourable Prime Minister, to use words that are not inflammatory in the House.
Now, isn't that rich? The Prime Minister of Canada has to be admonished by the Speaker of the House for what he's saying. Again, just another reason he should resign. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors about this, that Chrystia Freeland, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and one of Trudeau's cohorts, her grandfather was a Nazi. Now, again, I don't know if this is true, but it would be ironic if it was true. And I'm just going to play a clip from her. What we do know is that she's a Soros acolyte. Let me just play this clip. Listen to the glee in her voice as she takes rights away from the Canadian people. Accounts are frozen. They're monitoring people. Regular Canadians are now terrorists. It's shameful. So let me just play a clip, and then we'll be right back.
First, we are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies. All crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use must register with FINTRAC, and they must report large and suspicious transactions to FINTRAC.
Well, I'm glad we made her day. She now can oppress Canadians even more. But this is what she's all about. But let me be clear. The truckers have won. Trudeau, you have lost. The truckers have exposed you as being a Chinese wannabe and a young member of the party of Davos. And what you were doing is you were running a test run for them, and you failed. The truckers won. The Canadian people won. And before I forget, David Lametti is the Minister of Justice that called you and me and President Trump terrorists. So remember that name. And when Trump comes back in 2024, let's make sure that he is either resigns or doesn't run again. Additionally, the Jewish MP that Trudeau called a Nazi sympathizer, her name is Melissa Lantzman, and they will continue to debate this War Powers Act on Monday. Who knows where it's going to end? They may shoot it down. We shall see. Okay, let me switch to an article here from the Jerusalem Post. It says, Black Lives Matter activist charged in murder attempt of a Jewish mayoral candidate. It says Quintez Brown, a local political activist, allegedly attempted a shooting attack on Greg Greenberg, a Jewish Democrat running for mayor of Louisville. It says here, Louisville police have charged Quintez Brown, a local political activist, in a shooting attack on Greg Greenberg, a Jewish Democrat running for mayor. Now that sounds to me like an assassination attempt. It goes on, Brown 21 has been prominent in the city's civil rights activism, including Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, and previously worked for the Louisville Courier-Journal. So was he a journalist? Now, we do know that he showed up on MSNBC. He had been on the Joy Reid show once or twice. I find that odd. Actually, I don't find it odd. It says police said he was charged Tuesday with attempted murder and 4 counts of wanton endangerment in his alleged shooting attack on Greenberg's downtown office. No one was hurt, although a bullet penetrated Greenberg's clothing. No motive has been reported. Now, here's the interesting thing. He gets bailed out by BLM, and he's walking the streets right now. So Black Lives Matter comes in, and I think bail was $100,000. They got the money and bailed him out. So he's walking the streets right now. You know who's not walking the streets right now? Jake Lang, one of the J6 detainees, the Washington Gulag. And I tell you from my own personal accounts from people who know something about that jail, that is a hellhole. It's a political hellhole. And it likely should have been shut down years ago. And you're putting these J6 detainees in that place, and poor Jake is living in conditions that are the equivalent of a Cuban jail under Fidel Castro. Now, I'm looking to have Jake's father, Ed, and he was kind enough to give me an interview. So I'm going to switch over. Okay, Ned, can you just tell me a little bit about Jake?
Yes, my son was a gymnast when he was very young, at 5 years old. He did very, very well in gymnastics, and as time kind of moved on, when he was probably 7 or 8 years old, he got interested in wrestling, and he actually wrestled in high school. Throughout high school, he won a divisional championship. He was a really gifted and talented wrestler. I think the gymnastics had a lot to do with that. Once he graduated high school from actually, his team went to States the year before that he graduated high school. He was on the team that went to States in Delaware Valley. Great program down there with wrestling. He was accepted to the wrestling team at Hunter College, and he wrestled in Hunter College for a season. He really enjoyed the wrestling. However, college was really not his game. And so he pulled out of college and started his own internet entrepreneurial companies, social media companies, website building, construction, management, all that kind of thing, and did pretty well with it, and was making a living and sustaining himself, and you know, that was it was a great lifestyle for him, and I was very proud of him because, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I never attended college, and so he was, you know, following in that same light, and everything was moving along. Actually, the reason why he was in Washington, D.C. was for an interview that the day before, January 6th.
Wow. You really have to be proud of him.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a good young man. He is like all kids. He's had some troubles in his life, but what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
That's right. Well, who hasn't?
Right, exactly right.
Yeah.
I just was lucky I didn't get caught, I guess. But
yeah, that's funny. Now, what's the status with him now? I've been reading on the internet that he in a hunger strike.
Yes, yeah. He just came off of a hunger strike two and a half weeks ago. He started a hunger strike for 7 days, and then on a Sunday night, he had a small bowl of rice and a vegetable or a mineral drink, a vitamin drink, and then he did another 5 days on a hunger strike, and thank God he stopped that. The reason why he was doing a hunger strike is he wants that equal justice for the J6 patriots that are incarcerated in the DOC. We call it Biden's gulag.
Yeah.
It's worse than Guantanamo.
Yep.
And so he wants equal justice for the guys that are accused of committing crimes that are nonviolent, that are still sitting in jail over a year now, with no court dates in sight for some of them, and there's abhorrent conditions in there. So he wants them to be put out on bail. The folks from Antifa and BLM that were accused of doing much more egregious and horrific crimes, that were actually beating cops or shooting cops or burning down or attempting to burning down federal buildings and the like. They were not only had a lot of their charges dropped, their bail was forgiven. Kamala Harris was there. The 7 of the 9 most egregious Antifa folks were walked away with no sentencing and no bail. So he's asking. That's one of the reasons for his hunger strike, was that we want bail for these folks.
And Jake is right. Where is the equal justice? Let me just read an article from I believe it's CNN, the CNN website, and it says here, the chief judge of Washington, D.C.'s federal court lambasted the Republican Party Thursday for saying that the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol was legitimate political discourse. Now, I don't think they were saying that, but this judge does. A major political party has described what happened on January 6th as legitimate political discourse, Chief Judge Beryl Howell said, seemingly referencing recent comments from the RNC. So it bears repeating again and again, this was not legitimate political discourse. This was not a protest. And that's not good for a judge to do that. Howell is the second judge to reference comments from the RNC, which describes the event around January 6th as legitimate political discourse, in a resolution formally censuring GOP reps Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. An appointee of President Barack Obama, Howell has set the tone for many of the Capitol riot proceedings playing out in D.C.'s federal courthouse. She was among the first to sharply criticize political leaders for publicly minimizing the effects of January 6th, and then question whether government leaders, including the Justice Department, are appropriately reckoning with what happened at the Capitol. The government, Howell suggested Thursday, also bears some responsibility for public perception that January 6th was merely protests gone wrong, noting that numerous defendants of the deadly riot have been allowed to plead guilty to the low-level misdemeanor of unlawfully protesting. And do you think, if I'm sitting in the D.C. jail and I read this, do you think I'm going to get a fair trial? Now, what I've heard is they already offered a plea bargain to Jake. And they offered him 9 years. 9 years. Thank God he was smart enough to turn that down. This is not fair. They are not getting their due process. It is un-American, and they should be released. Just like the attempted assassin in Louisville. Okay, let's go back to the interview.
The second reason that he was doing a hunger strike is for the two ladies that were executed by the They appeared to be executed by the Washington, D.C. Police. And Ashley Babbitt was merely crawling through the window. There was cops behind her. There was a ton of cops in front of her. They could have used a stun gun. They could have simply, she's a woman that was crawling through a window, and that officer shot her right in the throat. And that's just horrible. That is not okay. That's not lawful, in my opinion. And that's, that case needs to go to court and to trial as a criminal matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also, and Roseanne Boylan, she died in my son's arms outside the West Tunnel. Jake saved Philip Anderson's life, and another man just a week and a half ago came forward. Tommy Tatum out of Mississippi. He also heard Jake's voice in a video, and he said, "My God, that's the guy that saved my life." And so he reached out through some other folks that we've been working with and found us. And so he's going to sign an affidavit also that Jake saved his life. Just a wonderful man. We're going to meet him next week. I'm actually flying him up to the protest outside the federal building, the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. next Wednesday on the 23rd.
Now, just if you wanted to go over the rally, and I noticed on the website, and we'll talk about your website in a few minutes.
That's Wednesday, I believe. I believe it's next Wednesday.
Okay.
It's going to be a rally for the exact same reasons that I was just talking about while my son was on the hunger strike, and also once the sentences and the sentences do not match the crimes that they're accused of being committed. The folks that are pleading out are giving horrible pleas, long sentences, just egregious injustice to these J6 patriots who are, they're really political prisoners, and then it's political persecution with the amount of time that these guys are being offered for the simplest of things. And we're finding out now that a lot of the charges concerning Vice President Pence and Pelosi were not apparently in the Capitol when the police officers opened up the doors and invited all of the protesters into the Capitol in a very peaceful manner. Apparently, the Vice President and Pelosi were not even in the building. So a lot of those charges looks like going to have to be dropped, which is really good. Mm-hmm. So we want equal justice for these guys beyond just the getting them out and getting them bail. If you don't have equal justice, you have no justice.
Absolutely. 100%. And what is the latest with your attorney? What is your attorney saying?
He's just, he's just a fantastic guy. Both Steve Metcalf and Marty Tankloff, just fantastic guys, very talented attorneys. Really think out of the box. They've been dealing with the federal courts for a long time. They've never seen the mishandling and the injustice that's occurring with the J6 patriots. Mm-hmm. In every manner, both their incarceration conditions and also post that, the type of sentences they're being offered, the horrible pleas they're being offered. The judges, we need judges that are fair and equitable, that are not tainted, and we definitely need the court cases, the trials, to be held outside Washington, D.C. I don't believe that it's even possible to have a fair and impartial jury in Washington, D.C., as the mainstream media has done such a prolific job at tainting everybody's mindset about exactly what happened on J6. That's why we're working so hard to turn that mindset around, because we're here about the truth, and the truth is not a friend to the government as far as January 6th is concerned. Well, that's why those tapes and stuff that they have, the 14,000 plus hours of tapes, they don't want released. And now there's a motion on behalf of another attorney to have them released, because the government's saying that's sensitive information. Well, it's only sensitive because it shows the cops beating poor, helpless people that were just there on the Capitol, outside the Capitol, exercising their First Amendment right. And the D.C. police used lethal force, rubber bullets. Patriot Black was shot in the chin, knocked his teeth out, put a big hole in his chin, shooting stun grenades and tear gas right into a static crowd. Flash grenades, and all of a sudden people's lives are being threatened, and that's when you saw people trying to save other people's lives, and the police pushing people on top of one another. And so most of the violence that day was a defensive type of thing, where in any American that I know of, when you see other fellow Americans, especially women, being hurt and pummeled by police that are just innocent civilians, unarmed, and you're trying to save people's lives and get them away from that. And this thing was just a huge entrapment. They enticed these folks to come into the Capitol, to come up on the steps. The police were taking selfies. They were opening doors. They were high-fiving the protesters coming into the Capitol, standing outside. So they're enticed. And once you had tens or hundreds of thousands of folks up on the Capitol grounds, they were entrapped. They just couldn't all get away. And then they were attacked. And we're going to show that in our documentary.
Well said. Now, speaking of your documentary, I just want to talk about your website. It's called J6Truth.org. And quite frankly, it's the best website that I've seen to date on our J6 people. And I was wondering if you could just talk about your website and then talk about your documentary.
Sure. Well, the J6Truth.org is a product of my son. I've got a couple of assistants helping him on the outside that are, he's telling them what needs to be done, the information. I've got a film crew and some other folks just scouring the internet. We've compiled a ton of great videos showing the police brutality that happened on J6. And so the J6 Truth website is .org is a website that's out there that we're putting together to actually show the truth. That we're not making up the videos. This is all footage of the videos exactly as it happened. An eyewitness documentary of the events that happened there, especially as far as Ashley Babbitt and Roseanne Boylan are concerned, and their tragic executions, as far as I'm concerned, they weren't just deaths. And that website is compiling more and more information and then cataloging it and timelining it so that you can understand exactly what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. Yeah. And there's a bunch of other sites on there that are like StopHate.com and Kara Casanova, Citizens Against Political Punishment, Political Persecution. Great. There's a bunch of other folks out there that also have websites that are sisters and brothers that are also spreading the word and changing the dialogue and getting the truth back into what happened on J6. And that's what our documentary is all going to be all about. We're going to take you from way before the J6 protests. We're going to take you back to the Antifa and BLM riots. We're going to show exactly what was happening back then, and how it was happening. And then we're going to bring you up to President Trump's speech on J6 and the peaceful protest and how that all happened with timelines. And then all of a sudden, when everybody was up on the Capitol steps inside the Capitol, and you can see people trying to be, not that everybody was peaceful. I'm not saying that. I'm not speaking for everybody, but 99% of the crowd was peaceful.
Well said.
Until the police attacked, and then it was a matter of life and death for innocent protesters trying to save each other's lives. Then post that, we're going to show you the political persecution in Washington, D.C. gulag, Biden's gulag, at the hands of the Biden administration. As Vladimir Putin said at the J6 summit, for the first time ever, Americans now have political prisoners, and America no longer has the high ground or the moral ability to chastise any other government in this world, because they now are persecuting people because of their political motives. And that is so wrong. It's so against our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and they're being trampled. And we're here to fight back, and that will not happen. And we're going to help America stand up and take this country back. Take back the House, take back the Senate, because what's happening now, if it can happen to us because of our political persuasion, it can happen to you if you are of the opposite political persuasion, if you have a different mindset of a government in there. And that's not okay either. I'd be screaming and raising hell just as much as we are now. This is America. I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on. That should not be happening. So we're here to push back and try to right this train and get America back on track.
Well said, Ned. Do you have a release date yet on the documentary?
It's coming right along. Actually, after I get off the phone with you, we have a film crew coming in. We're going to start the opening monologue. Most of it is put together, and then we have to just do the voiceover. So, give us another few weeks, and I think you're going to be really happy with what you're going to see. Good.
I'm looking forward to it. I have one last question. How are you doing?
I'm strong. I'm in the solid waste business. There's always somebody trying to beat you up here. You're always fighting the government and everybody else. And so, this is so now, it's not the local town. I've had to sue the local town because they came against my First Amendment rights because they didn't like a sign I put up that was contrary to what they thought the sign should say. And so we went to federal court and I won. And then they hit me with another another bunch of violations, and I beat him again. So I've been fighting the government and fighting for my rights, and now it just is on a bigger stage. And so this is a fight we're going to win because the truth is on our side, and that's the cool part about this whole thing.
Yeah.
The dialogue and the mainstream media portrayal of what happened on J6 is so off kilter and so slanted to the left that it's ridiculous compared, especially what happened with the Antifa and BLM folks for the prior 2 years. Mm-hmm. So the truth shall win the day here, and we're gonna get these guys justice, and we're gonna get them free and honest and fair trials. And freedom of speech and our other rights will be upheld, and that's our quest.
Well said. Well said, Ned. Again, I want to thank Ned Lang for the interview, and if you get a chance, check out his website, j6truth.org. And I'll be on the lookout for his documentary when it is finished and when it's released, and I will let you know as soon as possible. So let's go to a break right now, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, let's switch to Russia. Oh, God, it's amateur hour with this Biden administration and how it's dealing with Russia. All we've been hearing over the past week is, they're going to attack. Attack is imminent. It's coming. Biden says today, oh, yes, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't know what they're trying to do here, but it does not make them sound legitimate. It just lets us know that they're guessing. Now, the only piece of news that came out that I thought was significant is, let me just read the article here. The Russian lawmakers approved a resolution to recognize the separatist region of Ukraine. Now, just a reminder that the eastern part of Ukraine, a lot of people there identify with being Russian. And there's been a lot of conflict going on between Ukraine and this section of Ukraine that identifies as being Russian. So what happened is the Russian Duma, which is the equivalent of our Congress, passed a resolution requesting that Russia recognize them as a separate region. So let me just read it to you. It says, the Russian parliament, lower chamber, the State Duma, has voted in favor of sending a resolution to ask President Putin to recognize two territories in eastern Ukraine held by separatists as independent states. Now that's key. Now, Russia did want to go to war. Putin did want to go to war. This is a hook that allows him to do it. Now it's giving the appearance, at the very least, that he has the backing of the Russian people, the Russian Congress, the Duma. This should be the significant indication that Putin is probably going to do something with Ukraine. Now, this parroting by Biden and these State Department people saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen," you just don't legitimize yourself by just constantly parroting this. So that's where we are now. Now, the other thing, which I don't know, I thought it was a little comical, is that there's this issue going on whether the Ukrainian president should fly to Germany for a security conference. And I think she's supposed to meet Vice President Harris there, because people are telling the Ukrainian president, well, if you fly there, you may not be able to get back if Russia attacks. And then there are some people are saying, well, maybe he's just trying to bolt the country. Maybe he's afraid. Nobody knows at this point. Apparently there's going to be a decision made on this later. But I just think this whole thing is being run in an amateur fashion by the Biden administration. They had a press conference today, I think with some State Department geeks. And they're just out there saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have some sanctions. The sanctions are going to be terrible, and they're going to be really bad. No, literally, this is what they were saying. Nothing definitive, no timeline, just that, oh, it's going to be very bad for Russia. And I think I said in my last episode is that, well, you know, what they're doing is they are just processing this. The Senate and the politicians have to process these sanctions through their lobbyists to make sure the lobbyist clients don't get hurt by any sanctions, or they get hurt minimally. So that's what's really going on with this. So we shall see. We shall see. We're going to switch to stocks. Russia had an impact on the stock market this week, and let's switch to the market.
Money for the club. This may be some sort of peak. It's just not sustainable. It's too high, even without the Fed. It's just too high.
What numbers do we get next? I guess we'll get another CPI read before the March meeting of the Fed. What other places would you look to see about these inflation numbers?
I want to see retail sales, and I want to see auto sales. Retail sales because the runoff of all these assistance programs.
Well, that was Biden apologist Jim Cramer responding to the PPI report that came out. And what he was saying is that, inflation has peaked. I think inflation has peaked. Cramer wanted to see the retail sales report that came out, and he was referring to that as an indicator. So anyway, to make a long story short, the estimate was 2.1% increase, and the actual increase was 3.8%. And retail sales, excluding autos, the estimate was 0.8%. But 3.3% was the actual number. So again, you know, Mr. Cramer, stop trying to apologize for the Biden administration. It's just not working. If you understood history, you know that inflation was higher in the 80s. It was higher right after World War II. So we could go there again. Hope not. So we shall see. Now, speaking of inflation, I just want to play a quick clip from Charlie Munger. Charlie is, I think he's the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. He is the communist Chinese loving Berkshire Hathaway vice chair. So let me play it and then we'll discuss.
It's the way democracies die. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you look at the Roman Republic, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years, and eventually the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-run danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war. The safe assumption for an investor is that over the next 100 years, the currency is going to zero. That's my working hypothesis.
Well, I personally don't like the man, but I think he may be right. And he's been around long enough to view the impact of inflation. God, he's lived long enough. Maybe he saw the Roman Empire. So with that said, you know, just keep it in the back of your mind as you see inflation go up and up, and we shall see the impact that it has on this country. So let's switch to stocks. Okay, again, today is February 18th, 2022. The Dow finished down 0.68% to 34,079. Year to date, it's down 6.22%. This week, the Dow had its lowest drop in 2022 as it dropped over 600 points. The S&P was down 0.72% to 4348. Year to date, the S&P is down 8.76%. The NASDAQ was down 1.23% today to 13,548. Year to date, the NASDAQ is down 13.4%. Bonds, the 10-year bonds traded down 5 basis points today to 1.927%. Oil was down 0.11% to $91.66 per barrel. Gold was down 0.06 today to $1,900.80. However, this week it did hit its all-time high. Silver was up today, 0.31% to $23.95. Bitcoin was down 1.94% to $40,200. $2.69. Ethereum was down 2.85% to $2,819.24. However, XRP was up 2.47% to 79 cents. And with that, let me leave you with a couple of tidbits that we had going on this week. There were 3 members of the San Francisco School Board that were recalled. And believe it or not, shockingly, the ousted San Francisco School Board president blames white supremacists. So this is an article from the Post. He goes, it says, the progressive San Francisco School Board president, who was stripped of her position in a recall vote this week, has dramatically claimed that those who ousted her are aligned with white supremacists. Shocking. So if you fight for racial justice, this is the consequence, President Gabriela Lopez tweeted Thursday. Don't be mistaken. White supremacists are enjoying this, and the support of the recall is aligned with this. Now, I'm enjoying this, but I'm not a white supremacist. So it goes on, it says, Lopez and 2 other board members, Vice President Fauga Maliga and Commissioner Allison Collins, were all voted out on Tuesday. So that's wonderful news. Now, speaking of school boards, the Loudoun County School Board in Virginia dropped their mask mandate. Remember them? They were so adamant about having masks, and the parents took their authority back over their kids. And it's a wonderful thing. So they suddenly dropped their mask mandate. And this happened after the new governor banned mask mandate. So they were going to fight it, and suddenly, okay, no more masks. And then finally, the U.S. is starting their own truck convoy. It's called the People's Convoy. And it's heading to Washington. And the organizers unveil their plan. And this is from the Epoch Times. It says a trucker-led convoy will kick off February 23rd from the Barstow area in California and head eastbound toward the capital of the Constitutional Republic, Washington, D.C., to peacefully protest to end the federal government's emergency powers declared since March 2020, and in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and restore freedoms protected by the Constitution. Barstow is a city about 100 miles from Los Angeles, where truckers often converge since it is a major crossroads. The convoy goes by the name the People's Convoy and will be nonpartisan and cross-cultural in nature. At the start of the convoy, an estimated 500 to 1,000 trucks will gather and depart eastward for Kingman, Arizona. The next morning, they will depart from that location and head east on Interstate 40 toward Lupton, Arizona. On February 25th, they plan to arrive in Glen Rio, Texas. Now, they're a little vague about where they're headed from there because they don't want to give any opposition a chance to undermine them. So, good luck to them. I hope to read more about them. And you have a good weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. All right. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening.